It's heavy on the orchestrate. Well, a ridiculous thing to say because you said it's called content orchestration, but it's heavy on those sort of workflow elements that are always. Hello and welcome to episode 279 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast, a proud member of the Marketing Podcast Network. I hope you're well and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. I'm your host, Ian Truscott, managing partner at B2B Tech Advisory, Philosophy B, and on this podcast, I chat with a band of marketing chums who share their marketing street knowledge, which I hope will bring out the rockstar marketer in you. This week, I'm joined by Cathy McKnight for her monthly visit to the studio to discuss all things content, and we discuss the practice of content operations and orchestration. And if this is just another set of inside baseball wordy words that have no relevance to real-world customers. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back after this word.
We'll be right back
After this word.
Are you tired of juggling multiple software tools to manage your agency? Say hello to Deltek Workbook, the ultimate solution for marketing and communication agencies. With Workbook, you can streamline your projects, resources, and finances all in one place. Imagine real-time dashboards and reports giving you full visibility into your projects, people, and financials. Plan your team's capacity weeks in advance to avoid bottlenecks while staying on budget to maximize project margins. Plus, Workbook works perfectly for both agencies and in-house marketing teams looking to boost efficiency and profitability. And here's the best part. At PCI, we're a certified Deltek partner and reseller offering expert implementation, integrations, and ongoing support to ensure your success. Want to see how Deltek Workbook can transform your operations? For a free consultation, visit pci.us/podcast today. That's pci.us/podcast.
When it comes to relevant content, you may have heard Jeff and me talk about the multis on this show. Multi-channel, multi-device, multi-persona, and multi-language. On that last one, let me ask, how confident are you that your content actually connects in every market? You're not sure? Well, it might be time to check out Phrase. In our experience, this stuff used to be hard, but Phrase makes it simple with its industry-leading AI localization platform that helps you deliver content in multiple languages without losing your tone, your message, or your mind. It automates the manual work, slashes review time, and gives you real data on what's working and where. Brands like Uber and Zendesk trust Phrase to scale their content across the globe and get it right every time. If you're serious about reaching more people and driving better results internationally, head over to phrase.com/MPN and take a look. That's phrase.com/MPN. Welcome, Cathy, to Rockstar CMO. How are you?
I am well, Ian. How are you?
Very well, thank you very much. And how's the weather in Toronto?
Summer is here. The heat has arrived, but that's okay because that's summer and it's all good. My garden is going gangbusters, so all good.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it amazing? Like just a few weeks, must seem not very long ago when you were shoveling yourself out of snow and then...
Correct. Yeah, we had a really long, wet, cold spring. So it went from not nice and, warm clothes, like needing warm clothes to all of a sudden it was 40 degrees with the humidity. So
still, it's a lovely city where you are. And here, yes, summer is definitely, we're in a heat wave and we had quite a hot, dry spring as well. So I know we are one day going to do a gardening podcast, but I could swap notes on how I'd love to have had a bit more of a damper spring to get things kicked off. But anyway, what is going to be the topic for today? Well, today, the topic is we're going to talk about the technology of content operations because you are queen of content operations and orchestration and content in general. And so it's always good. And normally we chat about what's in the news and stuff like that, but I don't really think there's that much in the news of content management last few weeks. So,
well, everybody's on holidays. It's the end of conference season. You go to any marketing or technology related conference right now, and really all they talk about is AI and agentic. So there's rinse and repeat.
Indeed. I will raise the topic of AI, I assume, because it's now mandatory to talk about AI in any podcast.
Every podcast, regardless of what the podcast is about.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it is, isn't it? Because it's going to take every single job and everything. It impacts everything in everybody's work. But
yeah.
So anyway, so we agreed to talk about the technology specifically of content operations. But I imagine with the pair of us, there's probably something we need to do in terms of conversation about what is content operations and a bit of the process and that kind of stuff. And what I was wondering, the reason why I posed this question to you is because I've had some experience working with DAM vendors, as you know, and I wondered whether content operations, and I'm seeing a rise in this sort of terminology, whether it was like DXP for DAM. And I feel, especially if I say the word DXP, that gets the conversation spiced right up right with you. I wondered if it's actually a category that people are looking for, whether vendors of digital asset management solutions and those kinds of things need to start talking in this language, or if it's just complete bullshit. So, where do we start?
Content ops as a platform, I'm going to call bullshit on that. I called bullshit on DXP however long ago, and that came to be true. So, and I was not alone. I'm not saying that I was the only one who saw that. There were many. Never bought into it. We never had a client ask us for a DXP. It was always content management system, digital asset management system, something to help them. And they describe the problem, right? They don't even know the name of the technology. So that aside, having the right technology to run your content operations is essential. So, and when we think about operations versus orchestration, operations, there are many content operations typically within an organization, whether that's by brand, whether it's by geo, whether it's by function, whether it's by channel. And a lot of times they have their own ways of doing things. And what you and I have talked about a lot, and what I talk about a lot, period, at conferences and writing and whatnot, is content orchestration takes those ops to the next level, right? So content orchestration is the coordination of all the operations so that ultimately the experiences being delivered are the best that they can be. They're consistent, they're on brand, they're on tone, they're delivered through the right channel at the right time, contextually, eventually maybe a little bit of personalization, certainly hopefully some localization or globalization. So they are two different aspects of how content gets out into the world. They are not mutually exclusive, and you cannot orchestrate without operations, because orchestration is the coordinating of all the ops, right? But there's not a platform. It's about getting your technology in service to what you want to do, not being in service to the technology, which is what a lot of people are feeling right now. And to get into the AI thing is where AI can really come in and help things, because the ability to offload some of the route, repeatable, predictable, or very time consuming, when you think about analysis and whatnot, off onto AI, be it regular automation or agentic, it leaves room for the human to come back in and start doing better on the content side, right? And looking at how do you orchestrate those different elements. So you think about ops as the management of the creation, production, approval, distribution of content. And orchestration is coordinating all of those, so that it's activated the best that it can be to deliver the experiences to the audiences.
So this was going to be a question, but I think you've answered it. Is so content operations is actually a subset of content orchestration, and it also sounds like content operations is probably. And I know that in a future episode we'll probably have this discussion about where we are with content management right now. But it sounds broadly like content operations is like what we used to describe as content management, but in a slightly broader way, right?
Right, because we talked about back in the day, 20 years ago, CMS, content management. When you said content management, you thought singular technology. You thought content management system. And of course, CMSs have evolved into different terminology, slightly different purposes or meaning and what they deliver. But when you thought content management, you thought about it in that individual content management solution. And now content is managed across so many things, because it used to be you needed a CMS to be able to get it to the glass. And there was only one at the time, right? There was a screen on a computer or a laptop. Well, there's so many different now, and anybody can own the screen. So that's not a differentiator anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So the managing of content, or what I like better is content operations, which is that management of the process, right? It's how it gets from in your brain, like, hey, this audience could really use X, and here's why, and here's what success looks like, to actually delivering it. I mean, that's the operative process.
Okay. All right. So while we're figuring out these terminologies, so content orchestration is the broader business process that we're going through. Is this the making it happen, or does this include a bit of the content marketing, as in deciding on what it is you're going to say and what the topics are and things like that? Is that all part of this content orchestration stuff? So do you stick content marketing as part of this?
Yeah, absolutely. Because content orchestration is looking at the ultimate experience from start to finish. So from that first idea or wherever it comes from, whether it's, I have a client, I love it. They call their repetitive things, there's things that happen every year, they're reasons and seasons, which I love, to the one-offs, to the new products, to the, special, oh my gosh, got to do this. And it considers both. So orchestration is you have that master content strategy. So at the enterprise level, you've defined who we are, what we stand for, what our voice is, etc., which is the guiding principle. And then that is then cascaded through all things that are done. So when a new idea comes up that's going to be intermixed, it's being driven from an audience and a journey perspective, not an individual instance, initiative, or campaign perspective.
Channel,
So you work that into the journey, right? So that's orchestrated.
Yeah, and I think this also fits in with when me and Jeff talk about campaigns, we don't talk about single channel like an email campaign. We talk about a campaign as in we want to establish this view in the marketplace of ourselves, or we want to, run this particular thing at a broader level. So it sounds like this sort of ladders all up to that, doesn't it? That would
Correct.
be the thing. And do you think that in your experience, and it sounds like the answer to this might be yes, do you think that organizations are recognizing this in their team structure and processes? I mean, are people starting to use this language in the way they set up their comms and marketing functions?
I think some are. So again, content orchestration takes a recognition of content being a strategic function of the business, not just marketing, right? It's not a cost center. It's not just something you do and you throw away. It actually has value and adds value to the organization as a whole. And when you start looking at content from that perspective, I'll say a little more seriously and with more consideration, that's when you see organizations moving into orchestration. So we have a couple of clients who have done that, and it has made an immense difference, even in these early stages, where you're not just having these individual siloed operations do their own thing, or even brands or departments, geos. You're starting to pull it together with more rigor, with more standards.
Yeah, and I think also from a content team perspective, you're moving away from this short order cook thing that we're always talking about, which is just, you just create content on demand of whatever it is. You're getting ahead of the game. And also that thing we've probably been talking about for a couple of decades is insert content here. So somebody creates a great website or great creative, and then like the last 2 weeks, the project say, well, shouldn't we have some content in this thing? So.
Well, and it's also orchestration enables you to not start from scratch every time, because you're aware of what exists, where it is. You can find it. You can discover stuff you didn't even know was there, because there is an alignment on how the content components, so the pieces, the bits and pieces, the ingredients of the ultimate asset recipe are captured. So you don't have to take pictures of a PDF or try and break them down, because you can go and find the paragraph, the image, the graphic, the quote, the whatever it is, and use that directly and cleanly. So you're getting better data because you're seeing what's being used and what's being reused, what's being engaged with. Leans into content modeling. Like it's just this evolution of thought process and maturity in approach to content.
Yeah, and at the beginning I mentioned technology, and I think that this is probably more of an interesting conversation than talking about the technology as it turns out. But just as a quick heads up, what sort of technology are we talking about? Because I was going to say to you, is this a single platform or is it best of breed? And what you've just described to me is almost certainly it's best of breed, right? It's a number of different components that need to work together. So what sort of components are we talking about there, Cathy?
So when you're thinking pure operations, when you're thinking about moving from A to B to C to D along the stages, you're probably thinking about CMPs, you're thinking about project management or organizational tools like Airtable, Kapost, Monday. That's traditionally what you think from an ops perspective, right? Because it's the coordination of the process. When you look into content orchestration, it's those things plus, right? So it's those things plus Adobe AEM, Content Hub, Aprimo, Contentful, Content Stack, where they have, whether it's a content management solution, whether it's digital asset management solution, combination thereof. You think about, retailers or product-driven organizations. You might have a PIM thrown in there. You've got your commerce. All of those things need to be orchestrated and connected so that they're tied together and things happen based on journey triggers, right?
Yeah.
Next best action kind of planning and programming, as opposed to this is the journey I want them to take. We're going to produce, we're going to, launch this here and launch this there and push that here. And, it's all very predetermined.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's heavy on the orchestrate. Well, ridiculous thing to say because you said it's called content orchestration, but it's heavy on those sort of workflow elements that were always kind of like, we always felt were important in a CMS, but never really got truly implemented. But you're saying it's sort of like, it's almost like Monday or Trello or Asana first, and then the content repository second. So kind of technology that people need to implement is going to integrate into those sort of solutions, right?
Yeah. So you think about it from an operations perspective, it's the editorial calendars, the workflow automation. Those all need to be tied to the bigger systems, but then you leverage those bigger systems, the intelligence elements of them, the AI and whatnot, the automation for automatic routing and decisioning and delivery based on triggers and pulling in, enabling cross-functional and cross-team collaboration. So that it's not like email going back and forth and back and forth. So it's really operations have very similar subset of individual tech, but then the orchestration makes them smart.
Yeah, and it sounds like this is just like getting any project done in any kind of business at any time. So presumably, you probably don't want to impose a specific content orchestration technology because people are already collaborating on Slack or Trello or whatever, all the other tools we've already mentioned, right? So you probably want to slip into that and get those integrations out, right?
Not necessarily. You just want to codify them. So you're going to use, if you need a quick, hey, is the Pantone for this X? Yes, done, right? But it's within a channel, so now it's captured.
Oh yeah,
right.
But sorry, that's what I meant. That you want to work with the current tools, and we've talked about communication culture. You want to work within that. You don't want to impose something brand new because people are going to naturally go into Slack.
I can't think of one organization we have worked with that didn't have all of the communication tools that they needed. They needed to fetter some out. And they needed to formalize the governance for what is used where. And the biggest challenge of any operations, and certainly of getting to the orchestration phase, is people's resistance, refusal, obstinate, temper tantrum, I'm not going to do that approach to, you can't make me. I've always done it this way, so I'm going to continue. Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, I agree. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And then they're still calling, hey, Cathy, can you do X? And I then have to be, if I was on that team, I have to be the one and go, I can, but you need to put in a Jira ticket first, or you need to submit the request via X so that it's formalized. And, it actually, yes, things slow down at first when you start to put in some structure and rigor and get people to change. But oh my gosh, the friction only lasts for a very short time. And then it's like the clouds part and the angels sing, because it just does make everything so much easier.
Oh, absolutely. And the quality improves as well, doesn't it, when you get the comms right as well, because everybody's on the same page and everybody gets hooked in real quick.
No more redundant or much less redundancy. Accountability is built in. So like less reporting, less who said what. Like the harmony is phenomenal.
Yeah. And just a moment ago, you just said that, we don't need another term or heaven forbid, we don't need another acronym or anything like that. And we're full of these inside baseball terms in the content management industry. We've got a billion of them. But do you think this is the kind of language that, if you're using this language and your clients are using this language, would you encourage vendors to start adopting this kind of terminology and then making themselves relevant for this use case? Or do you think that, would you be more worried that it's actually gonna turn into an inside baseball term?
No, because people are already talking about content ops for sure. If vendors would do themselves the biggest favor if they would talk in terms of business solutioning instead of technology capabilities.
That's true. B2B software the world over, isn't it? That's a brilliant piece of advice.
And I just had this conversation with a client late Friday. She called me. She was in such a flap about one vendor who just wasn't listening and, saying how they were trying to sell them something that they don't need. They're not ready for. It's not answering their business need right now. And she could not get this guy back on the conversation that she needed to have. So she cut off the conversation and called me and said, "Can you help me?" So, I'm fortunate I work with the vendor. So I'm going to have a meeting with the vendor directly about it. But it's just talk to the people in their, solve their problems, use their language. This is not difficult.
Well, also that's a great advocacy for working with third parties on projects like this, isn't it? You've got an outlet, somebody that knows both sides who can arbitrate in that kind of conversation, right, and pick that stuff up. So it's always good to have a Cathy around, by the sounds of things.
Well, thank you.
All right, one last thing, and I did promise you that I was going to raise AI because
you did. You threatened.
We're mandated to because it's 2025. Now, what I was wondering, and it's kind of a bit random thought, is that you and I have been in this industry for ages. When I was at Vignette back in the dark ages, one of the big use cases, the thing with the ROI was there was a big story about how Nestle saved $1 billion gazillion monies because they kept recreating the pouring milk thing. And, they did that with 97 different agencies, and they implemented the software, and all of a sudden that went away. And I'm wondering whether, and that's always been the business case, hasn't it? You cut down on reuse, you cut down on all that kind of. Sorry, you improve reuse and you cut down on reproduction. Now then, if it's going to be of no cost to the user, we know about the cost to the planet, to the world, and all that kind of stuff. To create just another one, just stick it in the generative AI and say, I need another picture of a pouring milk or whatever it is. Why are people still going to bother looking for what's been created before? And is that going to change our business case of managing assets? Maybe that was a topic that should be a whole show, but are you seeing any change yet in that?
Yeah. So now there's a lot of opportunity, like you said, from a generative AI perspective to get variance, and one of the things that I can't think of one creative professional who ever loved the request for, oh, I love that. Can you make that a postcard now? I love that. Can you put that so that it's in a format ready for insert social media specifications here, right? And so one of the amazing things that Gen AI has done is when it's structured, when you have creative professionals driving the baselines, is that anybody can do that, right? So you look at Adobe Gen Studio, which is doing phenomenal things. Like they've got to be one of the leaders in terms of leveraging it for this kind of thing, where you're still using your creative professionals to do the master creative. They're coming up with the core concepts. They're coming up with all of the elements, the components that I often talk about when you break out the process. You have your content components and then you have your produced assets. So they're generating all of those components. They're putting it in a framework within a tool that says, okay, here are the components you can use. Here's what you can use it for, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that a marketer who is not a creative professional, by the way, not everybody can do what C pros do, can come in and say, okay, I need X for this particular campaign using these resources. Not only does it generate that, it can then score it and say, this meets your brand guidelines above the threshold of 85, 90%, whatever it's supposed to be. So no, you don't have to reshoot the pouring milk. But you do have to shoot the original milk in all of the forms that you might need it so that it feeds in, so that it is on brand, so that it is aligned and you're not getting, white milk and then, sort of beige milk and whatnot because somebody has messed with it, right? You've got to have those core components. It's just, you've got to think about it from a master plan, like a recipe, making sure you have all of the ingredients for all of the eventual content you might want to create.
Marvelous. I like that take. Well, it's not just a take, it's your actual experience and what's really happening in the world. So fantastic. so that's fantastic. Thank you very much, Cathy. And what have you got coming up?
Nothing in July. No conferences because nobody wants to work in July. And heading to Montreal for 5th and 6th, I believe, for the CMS Connect 25, which will be fun. I'm kicking that off, the event off with Mark Garapi from CMS Critic. So that'll be great. And then we've got some OG industry leads, which I'm very excited to connect with on a panel for CMS selection. There could be some dissension because I know at least one of the participants and I do not agree on the approach. So that'll be fun. It's always good to get some healthy debate going. And then, of course, I'm going to be on holidays for a couple of weeks in August. And then by the time we'll connect for sure and for August, but then September we'll start the crazy season all over again.
Yeah, nice. And that's CMS Connect 25. I've got a feeling that CMS Connect 25, I don't think the 25 comes from its 2025. I think it's been going for 25 years.
There's been a few gaps in time and locations and whatnot, but it's a group that's been around. Certainly, if you added up our industry experience in years, we'd have centuries behind us. Which
Mark Garapi, CMS Critic, has been around for forever, hasn't he?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's fantastic. And when people want to spin the dial on the interwebs, where are they going to find you, Cathy?
Our website is seventhbear.com. I am on LinkedIn, Cathy with a C, McKnight, MCK. And you'll find me there.
And I'll see you in a month.
Excellent. Thanks, Ian. Have a great time in Spain.
Cheers. So that's a wrap on episode 279 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thanks to Cathy for her insight, indulging our inner content geeks, and to you for putting your dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. I've been your host, Ian Truscott, and you can find links to me, Cathy, Seventh Bear, and my new thing, Velocity Bee, in the show notes on rockstarcmo.com. You can also find our blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes. Coming up, as Cathy mentioned, I'm going to go on holiday next week, so things may not run quite to the normal schedule, but keep an eye on the feed and I'll do my best to drop something in. But I will be on Simon Daniels' podcast, What's Broken in GTM and How to Fix It. We're recording that tomorrow, and that should drop next week, I think on the 10th or something like that. In the meantime, have a good week. Thanks for joining me here on Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Robbie Samuels hosts the On the Schmooze podcast. Robbie, tell listeners what to expect from the show.
Since 2015, I've interviewed entrepreneurs who overcame challenges to achieve success in their field or industry. Tune in to On the Schmooze to listen as I ask deep questions to elicit untold stories about leadership and networking.
And where can people subscribe?
Find the show at ontheschmooze.com or on marketingpodcast.net, or just search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard them. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.